unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity. And I think about that definition of creativity as we get going here. And I recall a mentor who told me once that pure creativity is coming up with the idea, but innovation is executing the idea and bringing it to life. And I think that's part of the conversation today. We're going to be talking about how leaders in all sorts of creative fields can close that gap between ideas and strategy and true execution and bringing our ideas to life and getting the results. And my guest is Sophia Kristjansson. She's the founder and CEO of Lexicon Lens. Sophia, welcome to the show.
It's a delight to be here.
With all your experience, Sophia, in guiding organizations, I read here great words like growth and change and transformation, clarity, alignment. All of these certainly what we're looking to do. You do this with companies, you coach us, you teach graduate courses, in fact. I think about why strategy often fails. You have all these great ideas, you go right up to the finish line and you say, this is a struggle. Why do you think so many organizations, with even smart people and smart strategies, do struggle with this execution piece?
Now, that's a great question. And I get this question quite a bit because I think people are looking for the real reason why their strategies can fall short. And the statistics behind strategy and execution and meeting our goals are not good, with 70 to 80%, maybe even higher, of strategy failing in companies. But here's what I'll say, that we as leaders love to make things more complicated than they need to be. And we also tend to be focused on too many things at the same time. So I call it getting focused on the bright, shiny pennies
Yes.
that don't necessarily help us meet our goals. I also think that people don't necessarily know or understand or are interested in, when they need to be, collaboration. Those three things, the overcomplication, the focusing on the wrong thing, and the lack of collaboration, really work together to keep leaders from meeting their goals. Going back to that bright, shiny penny thing, I see leaders make goals and start to take actions in the right direction, and then all of a sudden, a KPI changes, or a direction changes, or interest falls away. And it's in that hard work of the details, when you're going to get up to the end of a project or an initiative, where it gets to be the hardest and where you need to focus the most. And I think people lose interest. All of those things can work together. And there's more, of course.
Of course, yeah. I think about what you're saying about the shiny objects, and there's a recency effect, I guess I've heard it called. I just read a book. I just went to a course. I just met another executive. I just came back from a motivational seminar. Whatever these things are that say, and therefore that's taken our eye off the ball. Let's don't forget what the journey is. Let's look out the window every now and then, and we can be entertained or motivated. But that shouldn't take our eye off the ball.
That's right. And when we do our strategy days or our innovation labs with clients, we see all the time, maybe 20 to 30 things that leaders would like to do in order to get to their goal. And when we have to go back and say, okay, there's only so much time in the day, right? There are only so many days a year. We need to pick 3 things, not 3 things in each category. 3 things, 3 different things. And you can maybe choose a 4th thing, but that thing is going to be basically all of the things that pop up. So we also know that during our day, we'll set our own strategy or our own task list of what needs to be done, and life takes over. And so this is the kind of thing that happens all the time in big strategies and organizations. helping leaders see you have to be brutally honest about what it is that you can actually accomplish. And in that decision making around what can be accomplished, do you have the right people to do it? And one of those three things really needs to be around people development, which we tend to say is important, but not necessarily give it the meat and the structure that needs over time, because
Yes.
it is in many ways a thankless job, and it is lifelong. Those are the kinds of things that I see leaders doing. They're overly optimistic, maybe, about everything.
Yes. And internally in the organization as a leader, but you're speaking to me now, even in my consultancy role sometimes. I think about a strategy session I just facilitated, and we found here's what the right thing to do. Here's a great strategy. But we talk about brutally honest. We had to say not only, people, but capacity or size of the team or the experiences we have. Is this the right team to execute that strat? I don't care if it was the right thing to do or not. It might have been morally wonderful. We could change the world, but can the 6 people in this room be the right people to do it? So we do have to put it through that filter, don't we?
Absolutely, it's very important.
Yeah. And you're talking about KPIs and dashboards and things. Let's roll now to closing in on the right strategies and that execution gap. What kind of signs can we look for? Not just a KPI sign, meaning, oh, sales are down or our margin is reduced, but are there, I guess, emotional signs or team dynamic signs, collaborative alignment signs that you can see when a team is not on task, when we're losing traction? And then how do we address that?
So I talk about this in terms of the missing link and where strategy gets stalled the most. We've done a lot of research on this, and there are really 6 ways in which the leaders will not see the real problem. The first one is around looking at the wrong success signals. The second one is being siloed. And so there's a visibility blind spots that get going in that scenario. The third one is around communication, being mistaken for clarity. So we'll send a memo out on that, and it will take care of the issue, right?
I sent the email. Why didn't this get fixed?
Execution issues are misdiagnosed. Old mental models are being used without us really knowing it. And no one is surfacing the human risk. And so these are the signals that I see when I go into an organization that's leading me to understand that there is a problem. And what we do is we bring these leaders together to understand what it is that they're having an issue with. We want them to start innovating and collaborating with each other. And when I talk about these 6 symptoms, they start scratching their heads. What do you mean I'm not seeing the real problem, right? Our sales are down. Let's back into that a little bit and understand what the real reason is for that issue or that problem. And organizational leaders don't tend to, in my experience, always focus on those things because it's not their fault. Their time is taken up with so many different issues that need to be handled that sometimes they can't see what's really going on. So they lose traction. And what we do when we diagnose is to help them really create urgency around the right things to do. And when we can get them working together and understanding the principles of innovation, understanding how to communicate with one another, how to use technology without abdicating responsibility to technology. They go into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
And
Maybe that's a good place to take off then, because to say that leaders are under constant change and competing priorities and so forth, you could say that in any decade, any generation of leader, there have always been But as I think about distributed workforces, DEI challenges, whether that's positive or negative, depending on what you think of DEI, but intergenerational gaps, all these things that we say, look at all that today's creative leader has to face. Now, you could be overwhelmed by that and say, well, then, we're just not going to do anything and we're going to put our head in the sand. But if you're going to really analyze it and take some decisive action, what are some practical ways that I think of all the human challenges and complexities that it's real sales are down. And this is what made me think of this question. Is this really about the sales? Is this really about the sales people? Is this really about the sales process? Is this really about the customers? In their mind, what is underneath that situation? So I was just thinking about, as that complexity, is there some practical approaches or frameworks that you're seeing that we can get underneath the real reasons behind the challenges?
Boy, you really did not leave anything off the plate.
I left a lot of
really
room for you.
relational issues of the day, all of the things. But I think that's a very important approach because it's not just one thing. It's many different things. And there's this old adage, right? It's nature and nurture, who we are as people and how we show up and how we nurture ourselves and grow. So some of the frameworks that we use are around helping people understand the relationship between process and people. So they are interrelated and they inform one another to drive profit. We always suggest to leaders that the more status they have in an organization, the fewer statements they should be making. Rather, they need to be asking questions. So my rule is when I get into a room with a group of leaders, you need to ask 3 questions before you give an opinion. You need to look for the person who's quiet in the room and bring that person out and ask them their opinion. You need to set up your team meetings so that they are collaborative environments in which people need to prepare their questions, their issues, put it on the table before it's going to be discussed, and put together frameworks in that room to get everybody sharing with one another. If we're online and we're communicating via Zoom, getting those phones put down, getting the IMing down, setting the requirement that it's cameras on during collaborative engagement, using technology as a tool to facilitate, but not allowing technology to keep us from connecting. And I think that those are some of the things that we see. It's amazing to me that this needs to be taught, but we need leaders to slow down and to put everything away and to give their time to the people that they are connecting with, whether they're a stakeholder, a direct report, a colleague, peer, a customer, full attention for that 25 to 30 minutes that you have with that individual without looking at another screen or pretending that they're not the most important person.
Yes. The fact that there is a person connected to that role or that little Zoom square, that we don't know what's happening in their life. We don't know what's happening in the next room if they're working at home and so forth. And this is probably a good time to bring up the fact that we were introduced to each other by our mutual friend, Ian Ziskin. You contributed to his book, Lives Lost and Leadership Found. And this book explores this personal loss and reflections that we can learn and how that can both deepen our leadership capacity, but also help us maybe understand what life is going on behind the scenes, behind the work. Tell us a little about the chapter, the essay that you contributed to the book, but also, I guess, the experience or the life lessons that you learned from your own personal loss experience.
I wrote about my Auntie Nancy, who was a very important mentor in my life. And Auntie Nancy gave me from a very early age an understanding that I needed to work with all different kinds of people and be okay with that. And that I never should be thinking about issues from my perspective, but to open the blinders and to be looking at things from a wider perspective and what they might be experiencing in the situation. She started when I was very young, and her lessons were over time and small, but effective. And one of them, for example, and I talk about this in the article, was about learning how to play on the playground when I was 6 or 7 years old. And I didn't want to go outside and play with the other kids because I was being bullied. And she said, "You are going to learn how to read, write, and do your math. No problem. That's going to happen because you're going to school. It's the relationships and the interactions and the messiness that you're experiencing on the playground. You're experiencing life on the playground. And that's where you need to really think about who you're playing with, what you can say to defend yourself, and where do you go to get help. And those kinds of lessons stuck with me up until today, right? And they will be with me until I draw my last breath. They continue on. And as I became older, she started talking about purpose, passion, and values. And I believe those things evolve over time, right? Unless maybe we're born a prodigy, there's really a pathway in front of us. But even people are people, we all grow and change. So finding, understanding, articulating, living my purpose and understanding the passion behind that is a lifelong endeavor. And exercising the values, and believe me, I didn't do it well all the time. And she let me know that. Exercising those values over time and growing has been another message that she gave me. Those come into my leadership in very strong ways. I tend to be a very collaborative leader, for example.
And is there something about your relationship with her that not only anchors, but how was that burned in? Because we can think about all the great mentors or all the great people that come and go in our lives, and they make these impacts, don't they?
Yeah.
At an emotional level. What was
Yeah.
it about Nancy that did that for you?
I think that she saw this sense of joy in me and really allowed that to come out
Hmm.
and gave me the positive feedback I needed. You never know what a person is going to say throughout your life in different experiences that either is going to help or hinder you, right? Help or hurt. And she was very focused on building me up and letting me know that inner joy that I had was probably one of my strengths in life. And so it was the way that she approached me, and maybe we were kindred spirits in some way with that sense of joy and positivity that spoke to me. It spoke to me every day. And as an adult, I called her multiple times a week to ask her advice on things.
That's so good. I couldn't help but reflect many conversations I've had along these lines where people call these like the soft skills. It's the EQ, it's the emotional intelligence, as if, the important skills, the technical skills. Are you a great engineer? Are you a great programmer? Are you a great writer? But how many of us need the soft skills more than the other? So I think let's go to your teaching. You do a lot of teaching and you're looking at that next generation of leaders. How do you teach those skills, for one? But do you think that this new generation of leaders who might be coming up are getting it right more often? Was there something about our society or their upbringing that's maybe bringing them into the leadership roles differently? What are your thoughts and observations?
This is a complicated answer, and I'm sure that the way that I'm going to answer this would either speak or not speak to a younger leader, right? Everybody's different, right? But as a group, what I am seeing is that there is more of an innate understanding of technology as well as a commitment to self and to balance in life. And those two things are going to make life a little easier because we are in a time period that is very confusing. And so if you have the skills to take care of yourself, I think you might go a little bit farther. The technology side of it, in my generation, I'm a Gen Xer. I had to learn it along the way. It's not something that I grew up with. But for my son, for example, he's grown up with it. And so he understands it like it's built into his way of being. I think those kinds of skills are very important, especially as we go into AI. What I worry about is, for lack of better terminology, laziness. And I see this on the academic side. And what I mean is, oh, someone else will do it. Oh, I'm going to plug it into AI and spit out an answer. No. If you have AI as a tool to use, then instead of answering one question for your master's project, you're going to actually answer 10 because you have the tool in front of you to research. I don't know how many times faster than you would have if you didn't have that technology. So you're going to do more. And when I explain this to these people in their 30s, right, 20s and 30s, some in their 40s even, I say, technology is not an excuse to not think. Organizations need people who problem solve, innovate, and collaborate and understand how to work with each other even more than they did before. So the technology is a tool that you're going to help everybody else understand how to work with, probably. And at the same time, you need to give a little bit more of yourself to the process because we need to be working together. And I say, not only are you going to be providing more analysis for me, then you're going to be doing it even better than you could if you didn't have this technology. So you can answer bigger questions. But you are also going to be put into a position where you need to work together. And the final thing I'll say is that one of the things that concerns me in seeing younger people develop in the workplace is needing all the answers. Well, we don't have all the answers in business or in anything in life.
Never. Yeah.
You never have everything put together. It's a process. And so being engaged in the process, however you determine what that's going to be, and going back to your first question around strategy, is a process. So whatever the process is, you have to fully commit to that and buy into it. So I ask for more humanity, more interaction, more presence of mind with my graduate level students. And I do that as well with my client. I did that as an organization.
And I love what you say about being able to research and find more answers. There will be more ideas, but also to think about it in terms of more options. I've always been an options guy. There are lots of ways to get from here to San Francisco. Do you want to fly? You want to drive? You want to take the train? I was going to go back to my hometown in Louisiana and said, I'm curious, what if I said Amtrak? It is an option. Now it takes 52 hours and it costs like, I don't know, $2,700 or something. That's probably not a viable option, but it is an option. But how many of those answers to what you said too, is that in business, there may or may not be the right answer. So even if you have 10 responses, it may not be 10 right answers, but to have options, to have contingency plans, to have, the bad answer is as good as the good answer to at least consider. So I like where you're going with being able to research and get more ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And not every idea is a good idea.
That's right.
Right. And the other thing I'll say is that this is not just an issue with younger leaders.
Oh, so true.
The career leaders, it's an issue with everybody.
Oh, it continues for sure.
And so we evolve over time and yet we remain the same.
Yes.
And what I'm asking of my clients and my students is, why do you want to repeat history when you know that didn't work? Why not look at this from a completely different perspective? And if we looked at this from a different perspective, what would that perspective be?
I love that.
Yeah. And so that goes back to the issue around using old ways of working to accomplish new problems. It doesn't work.
Yes. Sophia, I want to ask you about action steps, but maybe before we get too much further, how can we connect with you and learn more about your work, especially at Lexicon Lens?
Oh, I'd love to connect with you. So visit my website, lexiconlens.com. My email address is Sophia, Sophia, at lexiconlens.com. Or from my website, you can connect me on LinkedIn. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Very good. My guest is Sophia Kristjansson. Lexicon Lens is her company, and just thinking about all the ways we can address this strategy execution gap. So, Sophia, people are going to be listening to our conversation mid to late first quarter. We always think in terms of results and strategies and execution and sales and quarterly results, right? So if we're listening to this and we're thinking, is there some small but meaningful step I could take this week to make a difference, even in the first quarter of 2026? What do you think we could look at and think about from an executional standpoint?
So remember when I spoke about those 6 reasons why leaders don't see the problem?
Right.
Go back to one of those and ask yourself if any of them are present in your teamwork, in your division, in your organization, and take one small step to diagnose the issue behind it. So ask yourself, what is the real reason why this particular project is not moving forward, rather than delegating that solution finding to somebody else.
That's good. I'm going to have those 6 reasons listed in the show notes. So listeners,
Okay.
easy to refer to and decide which one of those 6 steps are we going to take. Great call to action. Sophia, thanks again for being on the show. Great conversation. And I think actionable. I love a good philosophical conversations as much as anybody else. And I think about here I am in my virtual coffee shop setting right now for our conversation. I love to go to the coffee shop and have these philosophical conversations. But I also like your bulleted 6 steps, 6 ways to address things approach. So thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
And congratulations and thank you also for this Lives Lost and Leadership Found story. I really appreciate the personal side. And I'm just always reminded of you just don't know what else is going on in somebody's world. So whether you're on the Zoom call or whether you're in the conference or boardroom, there's something else going on in that person's life that we need to take respect of.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And listeners, thank you for coming by. This idea of creativity, where we get inspired for sure, how we organize ideas for sure, but how we gain the confidence, how we make the connections, how we align our teams to launch our work out into the world is also very important. That's what this podcast is all about. I want to thank our sponsor, White Cloud Coffee Roasters. They help fuel these creative conversations everywhere. You can have a 10% discount on your first order when you go to whitecloudcoffee.com. And of course, if you'd like to download an e-copy of my book, A World of Creativity, just go to mark-stinson.com. Until next time, I'm Mark Stinson, and we're going to keep unlocking your world of creativity.